start with the PlayStation 3 launch, which, let's face it, that first few weeks was a little bit rocky.
It's fine.
It's fine?
It's fine.
Yeah, it's okay.
It was only $599 US.
That's
It was
right.
fine.
People are going to run out and buy a $600 game machine. Now, the great thing about the PS3 launch is that somehow they managed to turn the thing around. I think it's good to focus on the positive of what became a fabulous console with a tremendous library of games. But that first few weeks, we were all kind of sitting there with sticker shock, or at least that was my experience.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the first couple of weeks after it launched. It was for the months leading up to the launch. Ken Kutaragi was just, it didn't seem like he could go to a presser without saying something that turned into a meme. I mean, it was just unbelievable, like the whole getting a second job thing, the $599 US, the E3 presser where with massive damage, hit the weak point for massive damage.
The year before too, and when they announced it was going to have like 6 USB ports and 3 Ethernet ports and 2 HDMI ports. You're like, okay, number one, why do I need all those ports?
Can I get the cheaper version without all
Number
those
two, it
ports?
didn't come with all that stuff either, right? Yes.
But in addition to all those ports, it also had the ability to play the video format of the future.
Blu-ray.
That was Blu-ray, yeah. Which Blu-ray is pretty groovy. And at the time, we were pretty thankful for it because the launch library was a little thin on this thing, so a lot of us spent our time watching Spider-Man. Exactly. Why were we watching Spider-Man?
Honestly, it was one of the cheapest Blu-ray players that was upgradable, the firmware, so easily at that time, right? So it was one of the best Blu-ray players that you could get. So, honestly, that's really what I did use my machine for, was to watch movies. And it was mainly Spider-Man.
Sort of a sign of the future, too, because that's now we use all our consoles as home entertainment systems.
No, it's true. That was kind of the beginning of that, I feel like, of the video game console truly transforming into the set-top box that goes to the living room. Also, another good reason to watch Spider-Man on your PS3 is because the literal font from Spider-Man was what they wrote the PlayStation 3 with. Because Sony was like, we own the rights to the movie. If people know what it looks like, let's just, instead of take a risk with something new, let's just use something we got already.
I liked the console design. I thought it was kind of megalithic.
You like the George Foreman factor?
Yeah, it was just fantastic. It was like, hello, I am out of an Arthur C. Clarke story, and I've come into your living room. And it was really, really nifty.
I just couldn't put anything on top of it, though. Like, I have my console stacked usually, and then when I got down, I was like, well, I guess this one kind of lives on a shelf by itself.
So we had this thing. We're watching our Blu-rays on it, and we're playing
Resistance.
Yeah, that's what we're playing.
Resistance.
And Flow.
And Flow, sure, and Flow.
But mostly Resistance. And why are we playing Resistance?
Resistance was this really, really interesting fusion of. It was this amazing historical fiction that it was like an alternate history sci-fi, the likes of which, like, honestly, we haven't really. At that point, we hadn't really seen much of that in the game space. So it was, if there's always that one title at launch that kind of shows you the promise of what a system can do, and that's a little bit original, a little bit new, like Resistance was definitely that thing. And Resistance is probably still actually my favorite in the series. Like all three of them are very good to varying degrees. Some very, very split jury on the third one. But the first one had a very interesting color palette that mixed kind of like kind of high sci-fi and like sexy sci-fi with kind of historical fiction. Very very unique blend.
Now you talk a little bit about that promise, and that's really what makes this launch a good thing. To say rocky is an understatement. Frankly, there was a time that a lot of us, I think, wondered if the PlayStation 3 was going to make it at all after that beginning.
It's a little crazy coming off the PS2 being the biggest thing and dominating that previous.
Right, and unfortunately, a lesson that never seems to get learned in the video game industry. When you rise to the top of the mountain, do not swallow the hubris pill. Just don't do it. Sony did, and it backfired on them. The Xbox launched at a lower price point. It got more good games quicker, I think, because it had that head start.
Well, it had that architecture as well. The PlayStation 3 had a very new cell processor, right? That a lot of developers had to basically relearn what they were doing to write for that platform.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's really interesting when we look now at the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, they both went with a pretty standard PC style architecture.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and honestly, like when you look at the games that came out later in the PlayStation 3's life, as some of the in-house studios started really getting their brains around it, the things that thing was capable of. I mean, The Last of Us, you just up-res that thing and it looks like a PS4 game.
Yeah.
It's really incredible what it was capable of, but it just took 7 years before anyone was really getting even close to the full potential out of it.
But when it happened, they ultimately did give us things like The Last of Us or Flower or Journey or insert amazing classic from the next generation here. The PlayStation 3 ended up a tremendous success story, and I'm happy it did.
Yeah, me too.